Hey guys, Basic going here. It is time for another event to know about, and this was actually really dope, okay? I have Toyia Taylor with us, and we are going to be learning all about Speak with Purpose, which, as someone that works in media, once I found out about the mission behind this organization, I definitely wanted to learn more. We're going to learn about their event that they have coming up on the 14th, including their preliminaries that are going down on the 31st. But first, let's learn a little bit more about Speak with Purpose from Toyia, aka their executive director.
Yay!
Hey.
Hey, girl.
Well, welcome to the set.
Thank you.
So, okay, let's jump right into it. We were just talking about how we're like only children, which I think also makes sense as to why you said journaling is something that helped you find your voice. Because sometimes as the only child, you don't really have anyone to talk to. You're just really around your parents for the most part. So, kind of figuring out that voice is very important for us to not feel alone. When it came to that, portion of that made it to where you wanted to create Speak with Purpose?
Oh, you going in the archives. I never thought about it. We were just talking about that, like being an only child and how we are around adults a lot and we want to know things because we didn't have people to talk to, right? And I'm a Seattleite. Let's be clear about that. But I grew up in Louisiana with my grandparents. So my roots are Louisiana, Bogalusa, Louisiana. All right, which was
I'm
one
ask
of
my
the.
dad where that is because
Yeah,
he's from
actually,
Louisiana.
he's from what part?
He always says just to tell people Monroe.
Okay, I know where Monroe is. That's northern
Yeah, he's up
Louisiana.
north.
Yeah, but my grandparents were gracious enough to let my mother move back home so she could go to college and have childcare. So I was with my grandparents, and growing up in the South, especially being a little Black girl, you are to be seen and not heard. So here you have this, only child who wants to inquisitive, wants to know things. So I was always in grown folks' business, but I was always told I was reprimanded.
Yeah.
And so, the older I got and there were things I needed to express, the journal became my refuge. The page became my brave space to exist and not be judged and not be told, you're talking too much and be quiet, go in the other room. These grown folks talking. And that's how the stories began for me. And, at some point, my mother, by the time I was in middle school, decided it was time to move back to Seattle. We were going through some rough patches in a relationship she was in, my stepfather. And my mother was brave enough to leave that space and make space for us back in Seattle. And so then I'll have to tell you how journaling really became the foundation for me.
Wow. And was that in high school where it became the foundation? Because I did read something about how you kind of felt like you were a little voiceless when you went to Renton High.
Oh man, Renton High School. Shout out to Renton, RHS. But yeah, I was really that child in the back of the classroom, and with my head down for the most part, going from this transition from the South back here. I had that twang, that Southern twang, and the story is that during lunch, at least for my sophomore year, I would go and sit on a heater at lunch while everybody else was going out and making friends and doing what teenagers do. I was writing in this journal. And there was a counselor by the name of Marvin Johnson, still a good friend to this day. But he stopped one day and he was like, every single day I see you writing in this journal. Could you give me permission to maybe read some of the things you're writing? That was the first time that an adult had ever inquired, wanted to understand what was important to me. And I jumped at the opportunity, and I'll never forget the expression on his face while he's flipping the page. And he's like,
You wrote this.
You wrote this? You writing like this? And he gave it back and he told me, I'll never forget. He said, if you can find the courage to speak what you write, you're not only going to allow yourself to heal, you're going to allow other young people going through the things you're going through to do the same.
Wow.
And that was huge for me, to hear an adult like lift up, elevate my words and say they were important. But more importantly, Marvin came back the very next day. I was sitting on a heater,
Doing your
writing
thing.
in my journal. And he said, I have a competition I want you to be a part of. I'm gonna sign you up. We are signing you up. It was called the NAACP AXO program, Afro-American Cultural, Technological, Scientific Olympics of the Mind.
Damn.
Yeah, till this day. So what AXO does is it is for African American students in high school to compete in the STEAM field. So it is biology, science, math, photography, oratory, classical music, classical instruments. And if you went on your regional level, which was Seattle, you get to go to the state level. So I ended up competing in poetry, drama, and oratory, and won. And all of a sudden, I was going from this regional competition, NAACP AXO, to the national with all African American students who are the best, the elite, the young, gifted, and Black in their fields of what they competed in. So you have these dancers at AXO, the state, who are like Alvin Ailey dancers. Wow. You're seeing paintings like Jacob Lawrence or Basquiat being done by high school students. And we are all in the same place, space at the same time. And it was the first time I really understood how gifted we are. And so after that, after Marvin introduced me to AXO, I did it my 10th through senior year, won every year on the regional level, never placed at nationals, but it didn't matter.
You were in the room.
We were in the room.
And you were the room, technically.
It was for us, by us, and the people who came before us, who did AXO, names, Felicia Rashad would show up. Jada Pinkett performed at AXO when she was in high school. Like, it never stopped. And so, speak with purpose. So in high school, all of a sudden, I became Black Student Union president. I wrote a speech called Wake Up, for as we sleep, meaning our parents and community, the children are teaching themselves. I used that one speech, paid for 4 years at the University of Washington scholarship, went to Washington, D.C., became Miss D.C. for the Miss America pageant with this one speech.
Wow.
And became the first woman to do oratory at the Miss America pageant. And after that, I wanted to give every youth who was silent in the back of the classroom, I knew they had a story and that it just needed to be told.
You wanted to help them release their voices.
100%, to speak their truth.
Yeah. It's not like we don't have a voice. It's just a matter of knowing that you have permission to express it.
That's right.
And then also them feeling that their voice is important. And it's like, you might feel like it's important to your own classmates, but if you're at home and you're being told, be in a child's place all the time, and you finally have an adult, especially one that might look like you, come up to you and be like, yeah, I want to know more. You'll be like, oh.
That's right.
Let me tell you everything. So with that, it is the only in-school program of its kind in King County. I feel like we've kind of touched on this, but why was it so important for you to get this in the classrooms?
Oh my God, with critical race theory, where they're trying to erase history in many ways, and they're not allowing our stories to exist, we had to show up. It's called counter-narrative storytelling, the stories that are rarely told in classrooms. And so you have these students, first generation to this country, their parents were immigrants. You have young Black students who are in the back of the classroom with their hoodies up, heads down, because no one is seeing them. They feel invisible and nobody's definitely telling their stories. So the opportunity to create a safe and brave space where they are, where they have to be, and say, tell me the story of your parents, your grandparents. What is your self-authored identity? Is your name Sally? Oh, your name is not Sally, it is Ishwak. Well, why are they calling you Sally? Oh, because that's the only way that people can pronounce your name. Tell me the origin of Ishwak.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you get kids who are like,
Yeah.
what? Oh, I agree. Me too. My parents had to do A, B, and C for me to be in this country. I can speak in Arabic. I can speak my native tongue in this classroom. Let me tell you about the food we eat at home. Let me tell you about the origin of my name. All of a sudden, the room is colorful, it's bright, it's vibrant, it's brilliant, full of these stories. And now, not only just full of stories, full of empathy.
Yeah.
And tell me more. And we're celebrating each other. Like, that's huge.
Yeah.
And the opportunity to bring in stories about our culture, African American culture, Pacific Island culture that isn't in the history books or hasn't been talked about. Kids are on fire.
Yeah. And I remember in elementary, I had a teacher and she was Pacific Islander, and she would like turn off the lights and tell us all of these stories from when she was growing up. And just like you said, stories that I'm not able to necessarily find in the history books, but she remembers those stories because her family told her the stories and they were passing it down to her, and then they were telling us the stories. And I think it's so dope that you're creating this space for these students to, just as something like their name is okay, to actually be like, no, we say it like this.
That's right.
This is what it means. This is where it comes from, to where they have pride in their name, not to where they have to change it. There's nothing wrong with the name being Sally, but if your name is not Sally, then your name is not Sally.
Right. Or if your name is pronounced Rakma instead of Rama, then we are calling you Rakma.
Yeah.
Because that is beautiful.
Yeah.
Show up your full self. So, it's amazing.
Now, speaking of it being amazing, it's so amazing that you serve over 750 students annually. That is huge.
It is a start. It is a spark. When you think of all the other students in all the other school districts who need to be seen and heard as well. So the print is there, but there's so much more to do.
So how are you guys getting the word out about it to where you can take this 750 and go to 1,000 and then 2,000 and then 10,000?
A grassroots effort, really. It is about, we're invited into the schools. We have to be invited into the schools, and that usually happens a parent who maybe talk to other parents who have our school or have our program in their school. They invite us to a PTSA meeting or an introduction. Our principals are incredible. So the principals we have partnerships with big us up and go and tell other principals about, you need to speak with purpose in your classroom. It is integrated. It is a part of the school day, a part of the curriculum.
Wow.
Grades 3 through 8th in any school that we're in.
It's like third period.
It is third period, or it's an elective or a language arts class. And for elementary, it's a part of their Common Core curriculum.
Wow.
So it's a partnership with the principal. We're invited to PTA meetings. We have our scholars come and do their pieces. And it's parents talking about, we need to speak with purpose in our schools.
Now, speaking of these students, if you could think of a story, it could be recent, it can be in the past, but a story of a student that sticks with you when they started and then they flourished.
Oh man, there's so many. I will preface it by saying, because students don't, well, in middle school, they can opt in to speak with purpose because it's an elective, but on the elementary level, 3rd through 5th grade, we come in, and public speaking is like one of the biggest fears ever. So when we first come in and the teacher introduces us and say, we're gonna have speak with purpose in our class, you see tears, you hear kids saying, I'm not doing this. You can't make me talk. I've seen snot bubbles, I've seen, girl, little ones under the table won't come from under the table. Oh, no. And I'll never forget at Pathfinder K through 8, there was a student, this was one of our 6th graders, middle school students, who literally would sit in the back, hood up, head down. And we give the kids prompts and free writes, and they have to write for like 3-5 minutes, just write. Then they have the opportunity to get up. Anytime the student tried to get up, they would hyperventilate, or they would just stare at the room. And I'll never forget one time, the tears just started rolling down their face and they ran out the classroom. So I went and I sat with this child on the floor in front of the lockers. And, I said, I'm just here to listen, to support if you'd like to talk. And at some point, they said, nobody understands. I'm the only transgender child in this classroom. I've been ostracized. I can't use the restroom I want to use. Nobody knows my pain and how I feel. And I told them, I said, just write about that for you.
Yeah.
Like me sitting on that heater, write that for you. I said, if you don't ever want to talk about it, but at least get it out for you. And if you want one other person, if that person is me, to just listen, to hear you. They did that. I heard their piece, their speech, their writing, and I was just like, you are so powerful. If you can allow yourself to get up, you're going to heal so many other people who have yet to find their voice.
Yeah.
This scholar got up in front of the class. First of all, if I'm not mistaken, we all turned so that they could feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And then, eventually we gradually turned and we were hearing them. By the time everybody turned around, people were crying. People were, I agree, me too, snapping. And you just seen how they stood a little different, and how it was healing them. This student then went to Rising Voices. They decided they got up enough courage to go to Rising Voices and do their piece. By the time they got to Rising Voices, they were so firm in their foundation and who they were that by the time they finished, it was a standing ovation.
Wow.
They won first place for middle school. They became an ambassador for Seattle Public Schools, the district. And I think the highlight for me is the next year, their parent called me and said, I always walk them to school and in the school building because they never wanted to walk by themselves. She said, Toyia, when I got to the door, they said, Mom, I got this.
I got it.
I'm gonna be okay. And she started crying and she said, I know that's because they found their voice.
You're like literally changing the you know what I'm trying to say.
The trajectory, absolutely.
Of these students, and to where it's like they might take a normal job, nothing wrong with a normal job by any means, but these kids have things to say. They have colorful minds that need to be expressed and need to be heard, to where I think it's interesting that the student was the only transgender in the classroom, but felt they had nothing to say, felt they couldn't relate to the other students, when in reality, they all have some common ground to where they can all relate to each other and all feel each other. And in that moment, they were like, oh, I'm not as different as I thought.
It's really powerful work. We had two students, they were a set of twins who had been to 2 or 3 different schools because their parents were Trump supporters. And so they went to this new school trying to have a new start. And so they're in the Speak with Purpose class, and they are devout Trump supporters. So the whole class, including myself, is feeling very defensive.
Yeah.
And, these kids are trying to defend what they believe and why. And I'll never forget the young man, one of the twins said, you said this was a safe and brave space for everyone. So why is it when I speak, I'm getting jumped on by the students as well as you? Where does my voice exist? And that was a really defining moment for me of like, all voices, all these children have to have an opportunity to speak up and speak out.
Yeah.
So him and I we started exchanging. I told him, I said, this is what we'll do. I will provide you information that I know, and you will provide me information that you know. I will listen, and we're going to openly talk about our differences and why they exist. And I don't know what happened to him, after middle school, but I at least know this. He created a relationship with a Black educator woman who was willing to hear him out, give him a space to have his truth, and also be open to hearing someone else's truth. We were able to coexist in areas that we were very different in, but a friendship occurred, education occurred on both sides. I know he'll take that with him. And who knows how that may change or help him grow as a leader.
Well, I think one of the things that it'll do for him, at least what I would hope, is that it creates a space for him to understand and also remember, one, what it felt like to not be heard or listened to, but also be like, this is how we can all coexist. We don't all have to agree. These are my thoughts. Those are your thoughts. Let's talk about it. And let's still have respect for each other at the end of the day.
That's right. That's right.
And it's important young.
You're right about that.
Now, really quick, you and one of your students were honored as Seattle Hometown Heroes.
Yes.
What was that like for you?
Oh my goodness, it felt like the Grammys or the Oscars. It was such a beautiful moment to be honored by City Council member Gurmai Zahalai.
Oh, I love Gurmai.
He's so beautiful, him and his family. And to have my student introduce me for that honor was it's so impactful for me, for them, and the room. Just that intergenerational, passing the torch or, being in the space. I still have people come up to me and say, I saw your student, I saw your scholar. And she was so poised and her voice was so big and beautiful. And that's just a testament and a reflection of the work being done in the program. And I thank Gurmai for allowing me to be honored. But I also love that he came to our program and he told his story about, being an immigrant and first generation here and what that felt like in the back of the classroom and learning to use his voice. And now that he is going to be our next King County executive, he asked them, I want you to create a pitch about being King County executive and what that means. You tell people the issues that are important and need to be heard. And those pitches were so amazing to hear little third graders say, I am your King County executive, and this is why you should vote for me. And they're talking about being unhoused, the opioid crisis in this city, being Black and beautiful, and supporting that, me as your next King County executive. So I thank him for that.
Yeah, he's definitely a good guy for sure. I went to his first inauguration when he was voted in. It was over at Franklin High School. So that was like a really beautiful day to like see him and his family come together and learn more about his culture. It was really, really dope. Now, coming up though, June 14th is the 11th annual Rising Voices Showcase. And this time around, it's going to be at the Museum of Flight. Tell us what makes this event so powerful each year.
Girl, I 12 years ago, or 11 years ago, we've been in existence for 12, but 11 years ago, I swear, a lot of times I do what's being put on my heart by my ancestors to do. And I had a vision about students telling their stories in our communities. We're griots, we're griots by nature. And the opportunity for us to celebrate their voices. And Rising Voices was born. And I had to do it. And in our first year, there were 30 kids. Now at this showcase, there are over 120 kids who opt in to present their original speeches to their community. And it is such a beautiful moment because we have DJs, the Seahawk players come out to celebrate the kids, community members of all different backgrounds. Paris Jackson, who used to be on air and is still out here doing journalism, comes out every year to support the kids as a judge. And to hear the gamut, this depth of knowledge that our children are holding. Some of it is heavyweight. When I was in third grade, I wasn't talking about the unhoused population or the environment and what is happening to our planet.
Yeah.
These kids are really serious.
They're also probably disturbed on what's going on because they see it. And with social media, what they're experiencing, it's not that these things weren't necessarily happening as we were growing up, but it also wasn't being tossed in our faces to where we couldn't ignore it, you know? And so it's like with the internet and with, you know, the different shows that are on TV, these kids are like, well, what in the world is that? And they have everything at their fingertips to learn more about it. So I'm honestly not surprised.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I love hearing the students, you know, some of the speeches this year are about having ADHD and acknowledging that and the beauty of it, what it allows them to do, and then how you can also receive support and resources so you can be your best self. It allows them, when they start preparing for Rising Voices, to ask their grandparents and their parents about their stories. So one of the stories is about their parents when they lived in the Philippines and working in the fields and how they had to carry heavy bags of rice and what they had to do for them to now be young people in the positions that they're in and what that means to them. So it creates this intergenerational dialogue too. And you hear that on the stage. And so it's a beautiful moment. I encourage, it is a all ages affair. Bring your young children out. The thing that I love the most is when our scholars get up, I hear babies in the audience saying, "You're beautiful, keep saying it, you have a voice." You start seeing every event my scholars do, you see little ones start saying, "You're beautiful, you have a right to be seen." So they need to be in the audience to be like, that's me. That's me when I get in 4th grade. That's me when I get in 6th grade.
Like, Mommy, I want to do that. That's so cute.
It is beautiful.
So let me ask you this: when these students are getting ready for their performances, how do you guys prepare them?
Yes. So, Speak with Purpose, the schools we're partnered with, we are either there an entire school year, and sometimes it's 1 class a week, sometimes it's up to 3 or 4. Or we're there half a year or a residency that's 10 weeks. The entire time we are there, we're building relationships. Students are learning to free write just to get the words out. Sometimes students literally write, "I don't know, I don't care, this is stupid, why are they doing this, why are they making me do this?" until something starts to come up. And then these speeches start to be born. And that's the process. So when we get to Rising Voices, you only see these very poised speeches that have evolved from being under a desk, snot bubbles, you know, hood up, head down, to a very gradual evolution of now we teach them stage presence. We talk about the body being an instrument. It is the voice, it is eye contact, it is how you stand, it's heroic stance. Like all of these things are happening as they are learning to tell their stories. And we talk about this is not a conversation, or excuse me, this is not a presentation. This is a conversation with everybody in the room. Your voice, it is less about you at that point, is a gift that you give to someone else so that they can then give to someone in the future. Yeah. So you are giving a gift. Your voice, your story is a gift. So they're learning all of these things. Our students are scholars. We don't call them students because scholars show up with excellence. They know to be on time. They know not to make excuses. They know to unapologetically speak their truth. And so we also talk about power in words. We talk about the inner coach versus the inner critic. Your inner coach is that one you have to lift yourself up. That inner critic is going to be that voice telling you, "I can't do this. Nobody wants to hear what I got to say. Why am I doing this?" That inner coach says, "Somebody needs to hear my story. My story is worth being told. My imperfections make me perfect." Yeah. So all of that is being, you know, it's being, how do you say, steered or in the pot to make the gumbo, the roux.
I mean, it's definitely a good roux. So I have 2 questions left for you. First question is, what legacy do you hope that Speak with Purpose leaves behind in this region?
And I said steered, it's stirred in the pot for the roux. What is the legacy that I want to leave? in this region, many of our scholars now are of the age where they're in college and graduating, 12 years. Our students are majoring in journalism, communications, education, because they want to go back in the classroom, going to law school, because they have learned the power of words, advocacy, activism. The legacy that I want to leave, that we are leaving as an organization, is listen to our scholars. They are leading now in many ways. I want the adults in the room to make space for them. Like Marvin Johnson provided, he saw me, gave me the affirmation, but provided the resources. That was the main thing. Make sure we're providing resources for these young people to exist, and then allow them to lead. We gotta at some point step back, knowing that we've done our job, that we will always be there, but then allow them to shine. For the legacy of Speak with Purpose as an organization, there isn't a child in this state that should not have a program like Speak with Purpose. I want us to go from 7 schools to 70 schools, right? So, my goal is that we become a statewide and then a national initiative.
Well, as you said, everything is like we're starting. We're at 750. We're going to keep growing from there. You have your event coming up again on June 14th. I'm going to give you a second to look right into that camera right there and let everyone know why they should come to the 11th Annual Rising Voices.
Come to the 11th Annual Rising Voices. It is a free community, all ages event, so that you can lift up these young scholars and their voices, their power. It is for us to show up so that they can show out and be seen and be heard. They're worth investing in. So join us in doing so. That day, the museum, admission into the museum will also be free. So make it a full day with your children, invite the community, and come out with us to the 11th Annual Rising Voices at Seattle Museum of Flight.
Awesome. Well, shoot, it's coming up. Definitely make sure you guys mark your calendars. I want to thank you so much, Toyia, for sitting down with me and talking about, Speak with Purpose and your upcoming event. And I can't wait to see what you guys do next.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Beza. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, y'all already know what I'm going to say, okay? I want to thank you for tuning in. Of course, I want for you to have an amazing rest of your day. And as always, keep that energy high.